Beep, beep. What is up, ninjas? My name is Sam World, and I make music production and sound design videos for dance music here on YouTube. Now, Tech House Melodies don't seem to get that much love, and most of the videos I've made that is revolved around Tech House usually revolves either the bass or the groove of a track. Now, a question you might have is how to make Tech House Melodies for your drop, especially when you have a lot of stuff going on. And in today's video, we're going to talk a little bit about theory and tips that I have for you guys. And while it might not be many, it's only going to be 3. These are a few that I've learned just watching other Tech House producers work, as well as interviewing them in the Dojo series we have here on YouTube. With that being said, if you want to support the channel, make sure to check out evilsounds.com. In this tutorial, I'm going to be using the Deceiver series. So everything you hear is going to be from that, and the new one coming out hopefully by the end of this month or early January. With that being said, let's get started with this video. Now, when creating Tech House Melodies, I've always wondered how people approach them. So I did ask a producer by the name of Fat Massimo when me and Soul were interviewing them in the Dojo series on how do you create melodies for your drop. Now, talking about the specific track he had, he did mention that for the melody, he'll usually keep it simple and utilize the notes from the bass, okay? So the way this is going to work is here we have an example of a little loop that I've made, just putting a couple stuff, and it's going to sound like this. Now, the bass is going to be following this melody, A, G, A, and then the little knocks at the bottom that you hear are hitting the E. So utilizing this tip on utilizing just the bass notes from to use as a guide, we can kind of create a melody here. So for this, I'm going to be using a new lead here that's not out yet. It's called Lead Crunchy Salt. And we're going to create a melody on top of this. So the lead's going to sound like... So utilizing that theory, usually what I'll recommend people do is, if you don't have an idea for melody in your head, is to start with the rhythm first. Okay, starting with the rhythm is probably the easiest thing to do, and then from there you can assign notes, because to me a melody is just going to be rhythm and note selection. So here we go. What I like to do personally is turn off the grid, just because from there I can kind of add my own swing to this. Okay, so from there, let's assign some notes to this. So what we can do here is maybe on go down to G, and then here back down to G, and then we know we hit an E as well, so we're gonna go with that, just following that. And here, I probably want this. We'll repeat and just add a very quick variation of E to A. The other cool thing that we can also do is, let's assume that you have this, but you're like, you know what, that's cool, but to me, I really want something different. Well, another thing that, again, Fat Massimo did is utilize octave jumps. So octave jumps is just going to look something like this, where I can maybe do A to A, and it's going to sound like that. And maybe I could do something like, maybe, and let's see, and then from there, let's play around with the length, maybe just like, because this is too long, it sounds kind of boring. Let's see if we go low. Treating your bass as chords. Now, obviously in Tech House, we're not going to have that many bass progressions going on. And what I mean by this is when you have chords playing, usually you'll follow the bottom note of the chord and do something like dun 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 dun, like in melodic techno, etc. But in Tech House, usually that's not the case. However, you will see people like chapter and verse, and a lot of producers utilize bass lines where you kind of have the same note, F sharp, F sharp, F sharp, and then you use up a semitone to create more of a darker feel. Okay, so the idea of this theory here, and we're going to change the lead to something a little bit more, maybe like, you know, a little more, yeah. We can use kind of this, good amount of reverb. Okay, we'll go with this guy. We'll leave the reverb. I know it sounds kind of newbie, but I kind of like the sound of it, especially when the track's this thin. So from here, we do have that F sharp playing a lot in this space. And then we do 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 do, which is going to go to that up semitone, which gives you the baddest feel. Now, in theory, if we have that F sharp, you can kind of say, okay, you know, F sharp is going to be, yeah. Now, if we're in the scale of F sharp minor here or G flat minor, as you're going to see with the chord, when we expand this chord, it's going to be these notes here, the triads, the F sharp, the A, the C sharp. So in theory, when I have something like this, and a question I get asked, like, you know, where can I start my melody? These are kind of good notes to play. For instance, if I go F, sounds good. If I go A, sounds good. If I go C sharp, good places to start. However, if I start to go over, like, let's say, very unstable notes and very tension-filled notes. So in minor scales, that's going to be the second note, and I believe the sixth note. You can see that just doesn't sound right. And if I do the next one, which is the D, again, you don't need those. It doesn't mean you can't use them. You can definitely start the melody with that, but it has to resolve to one of the notes that we just talked, which is the F sharp, the A, or the C sharp, as you can see. Knowing that, we can create some really awesome melodies, especially with that, as long as we're not doing too much and moving around. So for instance, let's try doing something here where maybe we'll do like a very fast sort of melody. Sort of like David Guetta-ish, let's say. Maybe do that. Ba 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 ba. Let's see. Okay, now from there, we're in F. Let's go to F sharp. And now we can maybe do some really cool stuff. Like, for instance, we could kind of work our way up. And you can even duplicate that if you want. We can also kind of do some really cool stuff where maybe like we'll start the melody on the C sharp and work our way down to the main note. So that's another cool idea. And then just kind of like this becomes a little bit more chapter and versey, but that. Now we can also make it sound a little bit more generic or Fisher-esque. I don't think Fisher does this anymore, but of course, it's just creating like these sustained out melodies on top of it. So the idea is again, we can start somewhere like F sharp and then do some really cool stuff like. Arpeggiated melodies. Now, these melodies aren't going to be like traditional arpeggiation, which what I mean by this is here we have an arpeggiator from Ableton, and a lot of times you'll see something like the way that most people are using it in tech house is going to be to utilize an arpeggiator up 16, and then you're going to put a step in there. And what this is going to do is it's going to play up an octave. So I'm going to play the note F sharp. And then if I hold it longer, so similar to kind of octave jumps, except you can do cool stuff like, you know. And again, you kind of heard this a lot, of course, but it's something cool that you can do. From there, you can utilize patches that have a bit of kind of change, which, you know, some patches out there will, where if they have change, for instance, of sorts, then it kind of sounds really cool because. And again, even though the melody is very simple, it also sounds very complex at the same time due to the automations occurring with the sound. So for instance, you know, if we go into the patch, let's go down an octave. I kind of like the sound better there. We could do some. Again, turning it into a melody, maybe we can go down to that C sharp. Chord stabs. Now, chord stabs are going to be a traditional tech house sound, and you can make it sound freaky, happy, and also just very harmonicful. And the way you're going to create this inside of Serum or any synth you want. For instance, here I'm going to have 2 saws, and I'm going to have this sound. Okay, now if I put a +3 on this, I can't do that same thing I just did, but again, a very kind of dark sound. And if you want to even take it more housey, then you go +7, which will give you a very beautiful. And these are kind of like traditional classic sounds. You can also go with square. So here I'm utilizing the technique of staying harmonicful, or sorry, in stableness. So this bass, I believe, is in D sharp. Again, my ears might be clogged up. And I'm just going D sharp, F sharp, and A sharp as the bass stays on D, and kind of legatos on there, has a bit of glide. Now again, I can also play other notes. It doesn't have to be like that. For instance, using the G sharp as a passing note instead of doing, you know, because that sounds sort of wrong. So again, utilizing the stable notes. So in D sharp minor, that's going to be my D sharp, my F sharp, and my A sharp. Again, it doesn't mean that you got to follow it, but most of the time, that's what's going to work. You can even get a little funkier by playing with the length that you're hitting the notes. And again, I'm doing this with the keyboard just because inputting this, for me, it's really hard. So let's go a little octave low. Respect the bass. This is going to be the last tip I give to you guys. And in all honesty, respect the bass. All that means is the fact that if your bass is going to be super busy, like moving around a lot, it has a melody, it demands respect, because again, as a listener, that's all that's grabbing my attention. Not even the claps or the open hats. It's more of the bass, hearing the dun 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 dun. Then a lot of the times you have to respect the bass. Now that doesn't mean you can't put a melody on top. What that means is maybe you don't want a melody that's going to be moving all over the place like a fucking arp, like. I mean, it just sounds cluttered as it is already. However, if you look at a good tech house producer like Dom Dollar in his track Pump the Brakes and San Francisco, there are ways you can execute a melody. For instance, in Pump the Brakes, the melody is going to result in more of a sustained sound. For instance, sounds better than me doing, you know, on top of it. So utilizing a sustained melody when you have a very busy bass is a cool way. But the other thing too is a melody really needed on top of the bass if the bass is already a melody. Instead, you should be looking at opportunities to accentuate it. For instance, I mean, as corny as that is, that's what's going to seem to work. For instance, I could also do, yeah, as corny as that sounds, it still works. It's not cluttered, and we have to respect the bass. The bass is already moving, has melody to it. And also, you know, the last thing is just accentuation. You can grab the bass and maybe accentuate certain shots of it. Like, for instance, you don't want to do this, as it sounds boring, but you could grab certain parts like. Or utilize effects as well. You don't always need to have a melody in tech house, but again, the point of the video is to teach you as much as I can when it comes to it. And those are some of the tips that I have for you guys. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the tips. Again, the first one, courtesy of Fat Massimo, follow the bass notes. So if your bass notes, you know, you have 3 notes, then use those to create a melody. And focus on the rhythm. The second one is to utilize, again, stableness. So if your bass is on one note, similar to chapter and verse, you can definitely create more of a massive melody because the bass allows it. It's not taking attention away from it. From there, we can utilize chord stabs in a cool way, as you guys saw, +7, +3, and of course, respect the bass and arpeggiators. But with that being said, guys, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully this gives you some ideas if you're stuck on a track. And if you guys have any more tips when it comes to melodies, maybe put it down in the comments and help us out. These are the ones I could think of off the top of my head from watching other tech house producers work as well as interviewing them. As always, if you want to support the channel, evilsounds.com, and I'll catch you guys next time for another video. You guys take care and peace out.